The West is often referred to as America's last physical frontier. But in truth, the Wild West would be the graveyard America's last true frontier was built upon. The last cattlemen, belles, pioneers, cutthroats, and ruthless outlaws of the western frontier would soon be the dust underfoot a far faster moving phenomenon than could have been anticipated. Men and women like Henry Starr that failed to adapt to the modernization and taming of the Wild West died remnants of the past. They died fighting the very thing they fought to gain their entire lives: stability. Henry Starr, the last of the Wild West outlaws, was a product of racism, legacy, and a lack of opportunity. But most of all, the romanticization of the Western outlaw. Henry Starr, son of George and Mary Scott Starr, was born in a log cabin on December 2, 1873, near Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. Despite the normalcy of his birth, far too little in his life from that point forward would be easy, fair, or just. With a father that had died early in his childhood, Henry had little choice but to take up his responsibilities on the farm. Despite gaining little formal education, Starr initiated himself into the difficult business of making hay for profit. However, despite his honest business as a farmer, little could stop his mother from remarrying to a crass, abusive Caucasian man by the name of C.N. Walker. Walker quickly overpowered Starr's mother, and soon Henry fought his stepfather over family finances. In doing so, C.N. sold Starr's plow, horses, and other farming equipment without his permission. Henry, still a young child, ran away from home. Starr pivoted plans in life once more and went to work for the Half Circle Box Ranch in the fall of 1881 as a hand and a wrangler. This worked for several years, until in October of 1891, while working with the cattle, he came into the possession of 2 runaway horses that had wandered into his paddock. Henry told his bosses at the ranch, and they instructed Starr to simply care for the horses and wait for their owner to be along. Starr did just that, and furthermore, Starr declined this offer and went about his life until in December of the same year, when in the town of Nowata, Oklahoma, he was suddenly arrested by a man claiming to be a deputy U.S. Marshal with a warrant for Starr's arrest in the supposed larceny of Charles Eaton's horses. Handcuffed to a hotel bedpost for a night and denied communication with any of his relatives, Starr, in his autobiography, attributes this treatment to his keen disliking of the government. This entire exchange ended with Starr being found guilty and sentenced to time in none other than the infamous Fort Smith Prison, Arkansas, commonly and colloquially referred to as Hell on the Border. Through deeper research and investigation, it is my analysis that Henry Starr was first put in prison at the hands of his stepfather, C.N. Walker. Of course, Walker would have benefited greatly from having Starr put away for life, but eventually Henry was bailed out by his cousin, prominent rancher of the times, Charlie Starr. Returning to Nowata for business, Starr couldn't find wrangler work without the accusation of being a horse thief. Steady finances seemed to pass Henry by again, as only a few months after being released from Fort Smith, Starr was on the wrong side of the law once more. Potentially set up once more by his stepfather, Starr had been caught smuggling 2 pints of whiskey into the Delaware Indian Reservation after a friend of Henry's had asked him to take a strange package onto the reservation. Taking alcohol into Indian territory at the time was illegal, and Starr was arrested on this account. Starr was steeply fined. Henry found it hard to pay off debt, and with his reputation tarnished, it became near impossible to find local jobs. Rumor had spread that Starr would not be able to outlive his reputation. Henry Starr was the son of George Hop Starr, a well-known bandit. Furthermore, little could be done to help Henry's reputation when his grandfather was a well-known horse thief and his aunt was none other than Myra Maybelle Shirley Starr, more commonly known as Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen. Financial issues mounting, Starr began to think. Henry Starr put away his innocence once and for all when one night in the July of 1892, Starr and a crooked man he'd found robbed the train yard safe in Nauta of $400. Despite the robbery having gone as clockwork, Henry's stolen horse had bucked on the getaway. Starr fell off and the horse escaped into the pitch. By the morning, Henry was caught by 2 deputy U.S. Marshals and sent to the Fort Smith prison. Bail was signed by E. Starr, a relative of Henry who at the time was the treasurer of the Cherokee Nation. Henry's fate was sealed as a criminal after this point. Starr skipped town shortly after being momentarily released from Fort Smith, making him a man at large. Henry's life would continue in this fashion till his dying days. Starr was not only the man to rob the most banks in American history, the first American to rob 2 banks simultaneously, and the first man to use an automobile as a getaway vehicle after a robbery, but also one of the only frontier outlaws to be commuted, paroled, bailed, or even pardoned for every single one of his prison or death sentences. Despite Starr's being a bad man, he maintained a level of decency not common in most bandits. He was referred to as the gentleman bandit, courteous, respectful of women and children, and fair to his opponents. Starr did in fact kill 1 man in his long life of crime. While he fired countless shots throughout his career, only 4 found their target. After several more successful Starr gang robberies of stockyards, the railroad company had secured the services of Floyd Wilson. Wilson was a contracted ex-deputy U.S. Marshal at the time. Despite popular belief, Wilson was not lawfully engaged in fulfilling a warrant through the United States government as an active-duty U.S. Marshal. Wilson and his partner used questionable techniques to lure Starr and his gang out of hiding. According to Starr, the following day, Wilson caught Starr unawares in a rancher's paddock, stealing horses. Wilson opened fire with 5 shots. 2 of them grazed Starr's clothing. Starr returned fire with a Winchester lever action. Each of Starr's 4 shots hit Wilson, killing him instantly. While Starr had many robberies to his name by this point, it wasn't until the next year, 1893, that Starr would rob his first of 30-some-odd banks in his career. Starr was an intelligent man and a quick learner, as is evidenced by his childhood farming business and by his quick adaptability to increased law enforcement in towns. Nothing could have prepared Starr for the wave of modernization that killed so many of his kind. As was common, judges such as Isaac C. Parker, aka the Hanging Judge of the West, was put in charge of the judicial system in the Indian Territory. They were commonly ruthless, biased, and if lucky, simply misunderstanding of the Indian situation. Starr feared the law, and in many letters wrote to his family of his arch-nemesis, Judge Parker. More than fear was excitement. Henry is a prime example of the perpetuated issue that furthered the criminal nature of the wild, Wild West, the myth and excitement that shrouded the Western outlaw. Starr once wrote, "Those that took up arms against the law, the people, and the land in search of financial soundings were all too common in the West, an epidemic of criminality, some might say. It is my portrayal and analysis of Henry Starr I used to say that the issue with banditry, robbery, murder, and lawlessness on the first American frontier was a direct consequence of 2 factors. 1. The advance of free-range manifest destiny without unbiased judicial intervention to separate settlers from natives, and 2. The romanticization of the Western outlaw as a range-riding spirit of American freedom and determination. The majority of Western settlers turned outlaws were in pain, denial, or in search of respect in one way or another, but more times than not, lack of fair justice and an unstable environment starved of opportunity forced inhabitants of the Wild West into dire straits. Alas, time to reflect on the issues with dramatizing the life of frontier bandits was crushed all too soon by a wave of modernism and new invention that brought about the stability Henry Starr robbed banks in search of in an ironic twist of fate. Henry Starr, and so many others like him, resorted to violence and criminality to find peace where it was otherwise not given. Furthermore, Starr's career as an outlaw was fueled by a fanfare of newspapers, plays, gossip, and movies that to this day continue to aid in American pop culture's profit off the painful life of a bygone man, a bygone era, and all the unspoken issues that blow away as the ash underneath the ideal of modern America.